The city's original name, Shalim, implies peace, yet its physical foundation rests on thousands of years of conflict, rising from the bedrock only to be pounded back into dust. The city's history is measured in these numbers. Jerusalem has been completely destroyed twice, besieged 23 times, and captured by competing empires on 44 separate occasions. To survive this relentless cycle of conquest, the city evolved by building massive exterior walls to keep invading armies at bay. Archaeological records confirm these defenses were built 4 millennia ago by original Canaanite and Jebusite inhabitants. Excavations on the southeast hill reveal a massive terraced retaining wall built around 1800 BC, designed specifically to repel external threats. For its first 4,000 years, Jerusalem's identity was defined by this logic. You build high, thick walls on the perimeter, you face them outward, and you protect the population inside. During the 20th century, that architectural logic inverted. Instead of wrapping around the perimeter to repel foreign armies, the barriers moved inside, fracturing the city from within. In the final years of the British Mandate, the administration erected heavily fortified military zones, sarcastically named Bevingrads, to divide the city from its residents. Open commercial avenues were sealed off. Normal urban flow was replaced by controlled, militarized corridors, requiring passage through checkpoints just to navigate downtown. The outbreak of war in 1948 hardened these internal divisions. Neighbor faced neighbor across fortified barricades as combat consumed the streets. The 1948 war effectively inverted the city's structure. The ancient tradition of outward-facing defenses was replaced by a modern mechanism of internal fragmentation. In November 1948, Israeli and Jordanian military commanders met in an abandoned house in the Musrara neighborhood to map out a fragile ceasefire. Israeli commander Moshe Dayan sat down with his Jordanian counterpart, Abdullah al-Tal, to establish a formal boundary based on where their respective forces had stopped fighting. They traced front lines using thick green and red wax pencils, cutting directly through dense neighborhoods. When that crude geometric line translates to the physical ground, the thickness of the at the tone strokes swallows entire streets. This unplanned zone became no man's land. A cartographic accident on a paper map was violently enforced as a permanent, militarized boundary across a living city. In Musrara, vibrant residential streets dotted with gardens were instantly transformed into a neglected ghost town watched by rooftop snipers. In adjacent Manoa, natural commercial flow moving toward the old city ended abruptly at sandbags and barbed wire, grinding the local economy to a halt. Legal passage between the two halves of Jerusalem was reduced to a single choke point, the Mandelbaum Gate. Movement here was heavily restricted, granted primarily to diplomats and UN personnel. In Abu Tor, the border sliced directly down a residential pathway. Neighbors were separated by a military boundary just meters from their front doors. The village of Beit Safafa was completely severed in two. Families found themselves trapped on opposite sides, forced to celebrate weddings and pass food through a chain-link fence. For 19 years, an entire generation of children grew up knowing only this reality, a cityscape defined by fences, armed military checkpoints, and urban dead zones. The implementation of the Green Line proved that when a crude cartographic accident is dropped into a living community, the human cost is measured in meters and years. The landscape shifted again in 1967. Following the Six-Day War, Israeli forces captured the eastern half of the city. The physical barriers of the Green Line were dismantled. The concrete barricades came down, the barbed wire was cleared, and Jerusalem was declared officially reunified. Even without the wire, the city continued to function as two separate urban systems pressed against one another. For decades, schools, markets, and daily commutes remained tethered to the old logic of the border. This persistent social distance eventually manifested in a new physical form. In the early 2000s, the separation wall rose to formalize the divide. Snaking through dense neighborhoods and cutting off entire communities, this modern concrete structure perfectly replicates the arbitrary division drawn by those wax pencils decades earlier. From orbit, looking at a global map, Jerusalem appears as a single dot, an abstraction of historical cohesion. But on the street, reality remains deeply fractured. From the earliest Jebusite fortifications, to the modern concrete of the separation wall, Jerusalem's history is a record of lines drawn to divide, first to protect the city from the world, and finally to protect the city from itself.